Your femininity is not a tool for manipulation.
Make yourself irresistible.
Let me tell you that.
The rise of feminine energy content and just like this whole desperation to find a man means that we're now listening to any man.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
And this even sounds very weird coming out of my mouth.
I'm telling you, we're different people. Season 2, we transformed beings.
We've transformed a little bit, but I love what you said about listening to men.
Oh, this is going to sound so controversial.
We love it.
Hello and welcome to the To My Sisters podcast. I'm Courtney.
And I'm Renee, and we are your online big sisters and hosts of the To My Sisters podcast.
We are all about the wellness, growth and development of a community of sisters across the world.
And in today's conversation, we are going to be talking about the rise of the high value men caricature. The pressure that men are under to be a high value man and the pressure for women to secure a high value man. Oh yes, we have seen the rise of the high value man take storm on social media and beyond. And we'll be talking about the ramifications of the high value man on masculinity, femininity, and intimacy within relationships.
Stay tuned. It's actually crazy that we are on video. Everyone can see Renee's pre-face.
Oh, please. Now, it means I actually have to look nice now. These times we'll come roll up in the studio looking dusty.
Oh, we were looking hella crusty. But I'm so happy that now it feels like you're more in the conversation, sis. And you can see our hand gestures, our new setup, all of it.
Courtney's facial expressions.
Renee's facial expressions. Renee's facial expressions. And also, we're bringing you longer episodes now. For everybody who is listening on Apple and Spotify, you may not know, but we have also started doing like a video podcast. I don't know if that's what they call it.
Yep.
But you can basically go and watch the full episodes on YouTube now. And please do subscribe. Definitely share the video so that people can get to know more about the sisterhood and just hear more of our conversations. Because I'm not going to lie, this one on high value men and women, sis, it's going to be interesting.
Oh, it's about to be really juicy. I'm so excited for this one, honestly.
So am I. But we said that we literally made this announcement on Instagram that we're going to be bringing longer episodes. And we are going to be discussing your dilemmas and giving you solutions to your dilemmas. Right. So if you are thinking about how you're able to send a dilemma to us, you can either DM us on Instagram at To My Sisterhood or on Twitter, or you can email us on hello@tomysisters.com and we will answer your questions for you here on the podcast. We're only going to be able to do one a week, but teardrop. But it's better than nothing, and hopefully it will give us time to give you a good quality answer, right?
Yeah.
Cool. So this week's dilemma is actually quite an interesting one. But I think it's quite an interesting one. So let me pull it up real quick. I'm 24. I still live with my parents and I want to leave my full-time corporate job to pursue running my own catering business full-time. I don't know if now is the time to make the leap, and I'm not too sure how to bring it up to my parents. So what should sis do?
Ooh. Quite the pickle, isn't it?
Very much so. I think this is one of the biggest challenges that people face when you're still really young and you still live under your parents' roof, or you still consider your parents' opinion like really high to the point where it really does guide your next steps and your decisions. You're not really that independent yet.
Yeah.
I think the biggest question that everyone has is, especially if you have like traditional parents who are less risk averse, I guess, they will tell you to stay in your corporate job. So everyone's issue is like, okay, I've now secured this job and I guess it's a corporate job, so it must be paying good bank. How do I tell my parents I'm going to leave my corporate job to take the risk to be an entrepreneur?
Because that's exactly what you are.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a tough one, because I feel like it very much depends on what kind of relationship you have with your parents first and foremost.
Okay.
Some parents are more open, some parents are less open. But I think baseline, it definitely does need to be a conversation. And I think trying to make sure that you lead that conversation with very specific intentions is also important. As well as making sure that you're having a clear, open and honest conversation with parents. Because I think sometimes we think of our parents as these big looming figures. And for a lot of people, maybe that's the relationship that they've had with them. 100. But as you're 24, you're an adult, so you actually have to level with them, you know. Courtney's looking at me like...
The reason why I'm looking at you like that is it just came to my mind. Some people's parents see them as children. Not just their child, but actual children.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes it comes from a good place of like, I want you to do something that's secure, you know, secure your future and stuff. But then other times it's like, how do you give somebody the room to experiment, to be themselves, and sometimes to fail? Because it's not guaranteed that you'll, you know, go, I mean, we wish you all the best, sis. Like, we're praying for the best for you, all the success. But there's no, with entrepreneurship, there's never a guarantee that you'll be successful, right? I feel like some parents have a real tight hold on their kids from letting them fail. And I think sometimes you can, I mean, my advice would be go in there. When I was telling my mum that right after graduation, I'm going to pursue doing my hair business full time. I've been doing it for nearly 3 years now. So it's been going well, thank God. But when I did explain it to her, she was kind of like on board. And then she asked me, okay, so what's your plan? And I think it's when I gave her the plan and when I told her that I really believe in myself, that's when she was like, okay, I'm on board. Even to now, sometimes I still have to like reiterate and continue to convince her. But I feel like my parents got on board when I came to them with a plan. But even when I gave them that plan, I did have to let them know that whilst I'm going to apply myself and try my absolute hardest to make sure that this succeeds, yes, there will be a chance that this fails. They need to give me the leeway to be free to take that risk.
Yeah. And I think also for me, it's about context as well. So understanding that your parents may not know what success looks like for your generation versus their generation.
That's so good.
Because when I started pursuing all sorts of side projects and side hustles, right? My mum just didn't really understand it at all. She was just like, why don't you just have like one job and then, you know, go ahead with that?
Right.
But a lot of parents may not know about, you know, the current job market situation where it's actually not feasible to have the one job or the one corporate job.
Gone are the days.
Fulfill every kind of sense of success that you may want in this life.
Yeah.
So making sure that you have a candid conversation around, you know, the context that you're living in, your generation, the job market, the way things are going as well, to help them understand that this is different to your generation. You guys may have been able to purchase a house at like, you know, 10K through a corporate job, earning X amount a year. That's not the same for all of us.
And when you be hearing those stories of like, when I bought my house, it just cost us 2K. 2K.
Do you know what it is? It's the fact that they bought their house for the price of the deposit for a house now. And
some of us spend 2K in like going December travels.
This is it. This is it. Like 2K is literally nothing now. In terms of like 2K is bills.
I mean, thank God that their investments have appreciated. But for us, it's a struggle. So I get what you're saying. I think it's explaining to them that this is a calculated risk. With the present circumstances for me, my generation, my age, I'm not doing something because I'm lazy. I'm not, because I think sometimes they can see it as, don't you want this, like the discipline of working? And it's like, entrepreneurship is discipline as well. And whilst a lot of people also understand the magnitude of that, I think it's also explaining that in my context, this is a calculated risk. Like this is, especially you're doing it like sis is doing it at 24, right? And 24 is that time where you may not be married yet. You probably don't have kids yet. And you're living at home with your parents. Like you can actually explain, this is the best conditions for me to do this because there's such, I say little at stake, but in comparison to most people maybe starting this in their 30s, marriage, mortgage, all of that. This is the best time. Exactly. Like it's very low risk. So come with a plan, explain to them that this is a calculated decision. You've thought about it. You maybe prayed about it. You've got all this, like you've got faith in yourself as well. And try to convince them. Yeah. But then what do you do if they say no?
That's very much up to you to deal with the ramifications, because having family disagreements, particularly with your parents, is never nice.
Never.
However, if you do, I don't want to be that person that's like a home wrecker. But if you do, if you do believe in, you know, I don't want to say just dream, because it's not just a dream, but actually your calculated risk. Then do you want to live a life? Like what is more important to you? Would you rather have your parents' approval and continue with your corporate role? Or would you rather have their disapproval for like a moment or like some time whilst you pursue something that you genuinely believe is of purpose to you. So it's really about what is more important to you in the grand scheme of things, and deciding to take whatever option is most important to you, really, in the grand scheme of things. Because
This is true.
Parents live vicariously through their kids all the time.
This is another thing. No, but this is another thing. Because I think this is one of the biggest issues. Like, our parents, out of love, can project their fears and their insecurities onto us. Yeah. And I think you've got to realize that you are your own person living your own life. And whilst your parents have been given the blessing and the privilege to steward you, and you appreciate their wisdom and their experience and stuff, like I said, they just have to at some point trust that they've raised you well enough, and they trust you enough. It's a matter of trust, right? Do you trust me enough to maybe fail but be able to pick myself up, or to be able to go out and voyage on my own and try out something and succeed? Do you trust me to do that, even if it's just for a small set period of time? Honestly, why not?
You might even want to make it as easy as possible to wager with them. Say something like, give me a year to see if this works. Give me a year or two to see if this works. You'll be what, like 25, 26? Still within your remit to go and get, another role if it doesn't work out and stuff like that. But if you, barter with them and say, give me this time period, allow me this time to see if this is successful, or, this could be a failure, and then I'm willing to, do the alternative.
It's true. And this can even be a motivation for you. You can say, like, I'll give you updates every 3 months, or I'll give you updates every 6 months, and you can kind of see where I'm going. I want to hear your advice and your input. If they really want to be like hard-headed about it and we're not going to give you the release, I'm so sorry, but I'm a legal adult. And I think some of us also need to relinquish, especially as women. I think this whole, like, for a lot of us, especially if you're like, it may be a cultural thing, but I think especially as women, like, your parents find it harder to let you kind of flee the nest. And when you're deciding your career choices and becoming an entrepreneur, it really is about autonomy, initiative, and making your own decisions and being a decision maker by yourself. And I think parents sometimes find it hard to let you flee the nest in that way, even if you're still living at home, to know that you're in charge of your money, your income, everything is down to you. That can be difficult. And I think you have to kind of sometimes put your foot down and say, I appreciate everything that you've taught me and that you are my parents. I still honor you. I still respect you, but I'm not a baby. I'm not a baby. And I think it's important for you to realize that as you're coming into your own as a woman, into womanhood, into adulthood, you've got to start having your own voice, and you've got to start having your own confidence to be able to make your own decisions. And sometimes that means kind of, untethering yourself from your parents a bit. And it may be, painful for them, but did they not have to leave their parents' home as well? Like, everyone has had to make transitions, and this is yours, as uncomfortable as it may be for them.
Some of them even left earlier than us. Some of them were leaving at 18, 17. You're 24 and they're already shouting. Goodness.
So that would be our advice, and we wish you the best in everything that you're doing in your catering businesses. Go on and flourish, literally grow and glow. Okay. And if you have a dilemma, like we said, you can message us on Instagram or Twitter at To My Sisterhood, or you can email us hello@tomysisters.com. So let's get into the conversation about high value men and women. I am so excited.
I'm really excited for this one because Lord knows we've seen it all over social media, as we said in the intro. Everywhere, high value men and women. Everywhere, femininity and masculinity. Everywhere, just relationships.
And we've spoken about it before, right? We've had a conversation about feminine energy. And the kind of rise of the content of that. So it's going to be interesting to now see, once the high value men and women, and talk about masculine energy too, comes into it, how it goes. So without further ado, let's get into today's conversation.
So, Miss Courtney.
Yes, Miss Renee.
I thought a great way to start off this conversation about high value men and women, but specifically men, is, what is a high value man? We've seen it flying around everywhere. And I'm curious to know, what do you think is a high value man?
So I think from what I've been seeing, and from what I know, I think it's looking for a man who kind of tops the charts in the upper percentile of the male species. So
the top 1%.
No, but it really is about the men that kind of tick the boxes on that kind of masculine energy and what we consider to be successfully masculine. So in the sense of, what's your wage? You know, what's your maturity like? What's your responsibility like? What's your intellect like? You know, what's your academic success level? Are you a graduate? Do you know, how far have you... What have you accomplished, basically, in the stereotypical sense of what men are meant to represent in our society? Which is oftentimes provision, right? You know, like, how successful are you in the monetary sense? What's your income? Are you an entrepreneur? How successful of an entrepreneur are you? How much of a go-getter are you? How dominant are you? How much of a man in the traditional sense? How much of a man are you? And I think the high value men are the people who... they top those charts. You know, they've gone to the... I mean, not even they've gone to they do the high paid jobs. They have, you know, a way of talking that's very confident. They are very attractive to women. They consider themselves attractive to women. They're on top of their, like, you know, their body game. They are just, they consider themselves the alpha male.
I knew you were going to say that. We're getting there.
In my head, I'm like, where's the word? There's a word that I'm looking for. And they consider themselves the alpha male. And the high value man, in the content that's been, you know, coming out and the conversations that have been happening, want the feminine woman. They want the beta woman. They want the perfect complement to those characteristics as the alpha male. But what do you think it is?
Well, I think almost exactly the same as you. From the content we've been seeing, it's that, you know, high achiever. For me, image wise, Courtney, I banter Courtney about this all the time, but we're thinking the long camel coats, the loafers with no socks,
the fedora hat.
That's it. They'll be taking all sorts of Instagram photos. Turtleneck. Can it be a high value man if he doesn't own a turtleneck?
If you don't own a turtleneck, good black turtleneck.
A good black one as well. Some white one, some grey, some nudes in the colour palette is really giving me.
They love a good camel as well.
They have the coats, you know, the long coats that reach there. Yeah,
we're clowning. That's what I like, the style.
That's what I think. And then the tailored suits, you know, the put together man. They stride and walk confidently.
This is it.
You notice them when they enter the room.
Yeah, very corporate as well.
They have very corporate. They have a quiet confidence about them. Yeah. As you said, they're a college graduate.
Yeah,
you know, they have a high income.
It's interesting even that you say college, because I think, first of all, because you schooled in America, I think that's in your language. But I think also this is mainly coming out of America. I rarely hear this stuff come, like, these conversations are now being had in the UK, which is where we're from. Yeah. But I think I'm hearing a lot of the conversations are happening amongst American men, which I think is interesting, because I think and I think it's also a cultural thing. Yeah. But I think for the States, it's a bit different. And I really you got to tread carefully when you're talking about stuff like this. Shout out to all our US sisters. But I think it's like, when you look at things like mass incarceration, when you look at maybe education levels as well, like how the public education system works in certain places, I think there are a lot of disadvantages towards men sometimes, and men of certain demographics, especially ethnic minorities. And so when you look at that, a lot of people, when they do come out of that system and they've done the traditionally successful stuff, like, you know, despite all the hurdles in front of you, you've got a good GPA average. Yeah. You've done well academically. You know, you're a part of because women, if we look at the statistics, are doing really well entrepreneurially. Like we're the fastest growing demographic of entrepreneurs. And I think even for Black women as well, the numbers are quite disproportionate. Like we're doing quite well. And so when you look at other groups like men, sometimes they can fall behind a bit. And when we think about, okay, the men that make it out of that and they've succeeded, those are the ones at the top percent. They're the special ones. And unfortunately, you can tell me if this is a generalization, but the proportion of the what do they call it? The ratio of women to men is really off-skewed, which means that there's very few quote unquote high value men, which is even what adds more to the high valueness, right? They're rare. And that's why we're even having this conversation.
Precisely.
Because they really think that they're a gem.
They are
a diamond to be discovered.
We'll come on to that in due time, sisters. But before we like really sink our teeth into it, one thing that I've had trouble with when it comes to this whole conceptualization of the high value man is the whole idea of value.
Go there.
So I think both of us have been very careful when we've been talking about high value men, in that we have been talking about the trends that we've seen on social media and stuff like that. But in terms of like how we really think and feel about quote unquote high value men, I think sometimes it can be a little bit problematic to ascribe the word value to it, because it means that by virtue of somebody who doesn't have one or more of these characteristics, does that mean they're lower in value?
Yeah.
And I actually think we should swap the term from value to more desirable.
Ooh,
because it's
so good.
It's less so about value and more so about desirability. And I think maybe we're being optimistic. And I mean, we've talked about the fact that we're both Christians, and the intrinsic value of man means that nobody is really of lesser value.
This is it.
This is more of a conversation around desirability.
Yes. Oh, I'm so glad you said that, because it's even something that we touched on in our feminine energy, wait a minute sis, episode, where we were talking about, unfortunately, when you start talking about, you know, literally exactly what you said, like you use the word high value or, you know, having feminine energy and using those categories or those attributes as strict kind of parameters and things that you classify people to successfully be feminine to qualify to be a woman and be valuable, it leads to a lot of people who don't fit in those archetypes being disrespected and being treated as subhuman. And that, like you said, from a humanity perspective, but also from a faith perspective, the intrinsic value of human beings has nothing to do with these desirability aspects. It's more so about the fact that just by virtue of being a human being, you should be respected. Respected might not be the word, but you're valuable. You are important. You know, you're a person made in the image of God. You're a divine being. So at the end of the day, you're not a divine being, sorry, you're made in the image of a divine being. And that's important.
It is.
So when we talk about desirability then...
And I think we shouldn't shy away from these things, because I guess when we talk about desirability, it starts getting political, right? It's like, oh, where do these desires come from?
Desirability
I think
politics.
Exactly this. And we hide when we say value, because value is more absolutist than desirability. When we start saying desirability instead, that means we also need to start thinking about, okay, cool. So where do these desires come from?
That's so good.
And you've already touched on it a little bit as far as like culturally, specifically to an American climate, what and why a lot of these features are seen as desirable. And it kind of naturally segues into the next kind of like point I wanted to touch on, which is, why do women desire these characteristics? Why do they desire the highly sought after high value man? Okay,
this is where I'm going to sound a bit traditional in my talking. I think because women desire security, and they also want a man who they can respect, and I think that's it. Like it comes down to, I want to be with someone. It's almost like that primal instinct, right? When I see someone, my biology, like my whole, if I'm going to be with you, my mind is thinking about family. It's thinking about children. It's thinking about future. It's thinking about what does our future look like? Can I be with you? Do I feel safe with you? Do I feel like when I'm with you, I feel secure? Do I feel like I would be provided for? Or do I constantly feel on edge? Or and that has so many layers to it. Like it can be financial, it could be emotional, it could be the way that spiritual, it could be the way you treat me, all of that. And then on top of it, I think, and I look at myself for this example sometimes. Sometimes women find it difficult. First of all, you can respect people regardless. But if I'm going to be in a romantic relationship with you, I want to be with someone, I'm talking about myself personally, who leads me, right? And who I feel like, oh, I respect you. Like I really want to hear your input. I'm inspired by what it is that you're doing. And so these traditional things and these traditional markers of success then come into play because I use them as indicators as to what's your trajectory in life, and is my future secure with you? I know that sounds extremely traditional, but like I said, I've had to reevaluate myself in terms of standing back a bit from looking really critically at it and more so thinking naturally, and this could be due to socialization, like growing up in the culture that I grew up in, faith as well. I completely understand that those are factors in the situation. But I do think for me personally, it comes down to those things. I want to feel secure with the man that I'm with. And I want to feel like I can respect you. And I think the second one is going to be a bit, people are going to be a bit,
but I mean, that's the point of like conversation, right? Like not everyone is going to agree with you anyway. So
how about you?
For me, I would say it's more so out of the desire to have somebody that can match me.
Ooh.
So not to sound like big-headed or nothing like that, and it's more so a preference and not a essential requirement. But there are certain characteristics that I see in myself, or I believe that I have, that it would be nice to have in a mate. Or at least there are certain characteristics where I think that I'm working on that I would also like to be with somebody. Because at the end of the day, I see a relationship as a partnership.
Yes, yeah.
So when it comes to quote unquote the high value man, or rather the desirable partner, then what I desire is somebody who could complement me. So when we do think of more like arbitrary characteristics, although these are not set in stone, things like education, that one is a tricky one because I don't think that education in the sense of like, oh, I'm a college graduate or like, you know, I've got this master's or whatnot, is a good indicator of intelligence.
100%.
It's an arbitrary one and it's useful in that, okay, I know that, okay, you finish high school, like you finish secondary school and like you can
that
do
should
maths.
mean X, Y, Z.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I don't think that's the best indicator, but having some baseline level of intelligence where we can actually converse about topics that we're both passionate about is important to me.
But you said that it's more like a preference thing.
Yeah.
But I feel like it's, okay, this could just be because you're my best mate. But like, I feel like it's an essential. My mind goes back.
Stop it.
We have a would you rather.
Oh yeah.
On our Instagram.
Oh yeah.
And
literally,
fine. Mary, shout out to Mary, who is my little sister, like my younger sister, and she's asking us questions, and she was like, "Could you be with someone who was, quote unquote, less intelligent than you? Like, you couldn't have that kind of conversation?" And we were just like, "No, we can't," because whilst it's a preference, it's one of those preferences that can sometimes be a non-negotiable. Yeah. So
that's fair. I was trying to be apolitical. Courtney,
I could tell. But the thing is, I feel like you can, but I think we just need to be real. Like for some people, and I don't think it's bad because I think also men do it. Yeah. They do it with women. Like I want my women to, or my women, I want the woman that I'm with.
My woman.
100%. I want the woman that I'm with to look like this. Yeah. I wouldn't date a girl who's like that. And I think most times we don't look at them like, okay, maybe we do call into question, you know, desirability politics, things like colorism and all these other things. But I think also when they say certain things like, I want, you know, my woman to be educated, or I want the woman that I end up with to be educated to this degree. We don't then go, that's not fair. We're just like, yeah, okay. Yeah. You know, because I feel like preference is sometimes a privilege we give to men and we don't allow women to have it. Yeah. And if a woman then says, I want my future partner to be intelligent, it's like, oh, that's not fair. Like there's loads of men out there who, shut up. Like this is my preference. Yeah, and I think we should all be allowed our preferences, of course, with the remits that it's not harmful and problematic and stuff like that. But I think your preference is your preference. You shouldn't really have to. I don't know if
compromise.
You get what I'm trying to say.
No, I hear it.
Not just you shouldn't have to compromise. You can compromise, but let it be your choice. Don't let people force you into compromising or shame you, especially as a woman, shame you for having a standard. For that, because I think that's sometimes what we don't allow women to have standards. Like I have because we feel like, but a man's gonna come and pick you, so you polish yourself, and whoever comes is whoever comes. Nah, like I'm gonna choose. And I'm also going to make a choice about who I'm going to be with. And I want that person to also, I have standards for that person and what I want my future to look like. Of course, there's personal compromises that you make. Okay, maybe he's not as tall as you want him to be. But then there's also non-negotiables and you should be allowed to have those things. Yeah. That's what I think.
Yeah. No, I hear it. As you were talking though, one thing that was coming up into my mind was, it's interesting how a lot of the characteristics of a high value man is considered normative for a lot of women. So this whole idea of like they're college educated, they're working a like relatively stable role and stuff like that. I feel like a lot of women have that.
Do they?
We even spoke about the fact that disproportionately women are on the rise.
Oh yeah.
So it's and I get that, you know, it's within the context of like cultural like disadvantages that, you know, men are facing and stuff like that. But it's just so interesting that a lot of the things that women have and desire are so limited, or seem to have been in limited edition for men.
Okay, I get you. I get you. I think that's actually really true. But then do you think that's because we're being measured based on different things? So in the sense that, okay, like loads of women are educated and are, you know, boss babes and all of that, but men don't really care about that.
That's it. Yeah.
Do you get what I mean?
Yeah.
Whereas with women, the reason why it can be a bit more salient is because
that's actually what men are measured by.
That's what we're measured like.
And everything that women do that is like that is more of a plus.
Yeah, it's like it's not the essential. So I think that's where a lot of us get frustrated, because it's like, I can match you in these places, but that's not what he's looking for.
We'll get into that. We'll get into that in a wee second. But really, to tie up this whole conversation around the essentialisms of a high value man, what do you think around the idea that women put men under pressure to be a high value man? And do you think it's too much?
Society puts men under pressure. Like it's not just women, it's men and women. Like, because men have that thing between them.
Absolutely.
Where it's like, what car are you driving? What shoes are you wearing? Do you get what I mean? What job do you have? And there's kind of that, sometimes it's healthy competition and sometimes it's toxic, because it's like your masculinity period is qualified by these things. And so everyone is judging you by these messages. And I think that can be toxic when we don't allow men to evolve. We don't give men the ability to talk about the realities of that pressure, and also to ease off and realize that whilst there are these societal expectations, you are also an individual and you have a life circumstance happening around you, and you should be able to have feel a range of emotions and not feel as though that's degrading you or taking you, you know, down levels in your masculinity score, in the sense of being able to feel what are sometimes considered feminine traits. Men sometimes completely exclude that in an attempt to be the complete alpha dominant male. And it's like, actually, these traits are necessary for every human being. The context may change and the levels may need to be tweaked a bit depending on what you're doing, but you should be able to be compassionate. You should be able to be affectionate. You should be able to be submissive in some context. And I think sometimes men don't allow themselves to feel that stuff. I do think women are active participants in that.
Yeah, for sure.
But so are men. You know, when your dad turns to you and tells you don't cry, man up, men don't cry, those standards are being upheld by men and women. You know, and we were talking about this in a couple episodes ago, where patriarchy is upheld by both men and women. And I think that's when we need to kind of have really critical conversations in terms of, this isn't just about women expecting it from you. This is about women expect it from you because you've also taught us that's what we should expect. Do you get what I mean? So it keeps that cycle going. Do you get what I mean?
That's a good point. I enjoy it. That's a good point. That's good.
Yeah, thank you. I really feel
that was good. No, I really enjoyed that one. You really brought in social construction, frameworks, patriarchy. You just did, you know.
Anyway, go on. Guys, this is all the stuff that we usually cut out of the audio.
To keep in that timing. But no, I love the fact that you talked about the fact that this isn't just a women's problem. Like this isn't just, because I am so tired of the whole conversations around, no, not tired, but I hear that men feel like they're being put under pressure. But I've seen in a lot of like conversations online around like men expressing that they feel a lot of pressure specifically from women when they enter into a dating situation or a relationship situation, and a woman is upfront about the fact that, you know, I want to get married or this is what I would like from this relationship, and it's like, oh, I feel under pressure. It's like, I get that, but also understand that pressure is not just her. Like the problem is not just her. The problem is bigger than her. And I think it's important that you put it into the context of patriarchy is something that is upheld by both parties.
Literally.
All parties.
Literally.
Like we are literally living in a society that measures men and their masculinity by how much they can provide.
Yeah. And these pressures, sorry, I'm so sorry.
No, go for it.
These pressures aren't just external either.
Yeah.
They're oftentimes internal.
Absolutely.
Like, even if I was to tell you, oh no, babe, like, you don't have to do X, Y, Z, and then your friends were like, yeah, bro, like, calm down. Inside, because of these internalized concepts and ideas and traditions, you may be thinking, nah, like, even if I was to cool it down a bit, I'm not going to be respected as much. So I'm still going to uphold it. So all of these factors, it really is circular. Like, it's everywhere.
It's everywhere. And you can't run from it, unfortunately.
You can't hide.
Well, that ties up quite neatly the first segment.
I really love these connectives that you have, man. They're actually O1.
Why do you think, first of all, do you think that women idolize being in a relationship? Ooh. And if so, why?
Yes. If you go back to this answer is quite short, because I feel like we answer this question is quite unpacked in our, is it when will you marry? Yeah, when will you marry? And kind of it's an episode in season 1. If you haven't listened to it, I highly suggest you do. It's one of our earlier ones. Yeah. Where we talk about oftentimes the true marker of the pinnacle and peak of womanhood being achieved is to get a ring on your finger. You know, you're not considered fully woman until a man has said, yeah, I choose you. I pick
plucked you from your
that
unmarried, the unmarried fields, the wilderness. You've been made whole.
Literally. And I think that's why sometimes we can idolize being in a relationship. And I think sometimes men do it too. You know, because they use it as an ego boost. They have less pressure, you know, and you can do it whenever. But it's definitely an ego boost when you can say, obviously, you know, marriage is not just about ego and about, you know, feeling qualified. It has so many layers to it. But at the same time, I think that's sometimes what it can look like on the surface level when you look at why people, especially women, like when you look at the conversations people have when a woman is not married, it's oftentimes like,
why?
Yeah, like, do you not feel like you'll be a true woman when, you know, you get married, you've got your husband, you're in your husband's house, you're doing all these, you know,
even you're in your husband's house, even though we're both paying mortgage, it's as well.
But I guess that language is quite archaic, but in the sense of, you know, being a mother and all, like, people often, men are allowed to be men even, you know, before they're married. Women don't really cross over into womanhood, it seems, until they are married. I think that's sometimes how it's framed. You know, there's being a boy, there's being a teenager, then, you know, you get your first job, you're a man now. You're a man. Go and sow your wild oats, whether you're married or not, so we don't care. But and then you cross over into that dimension of being like a father, a husband and all that. But then with women, it's kind of seen like, you're a girl, you're a teenager, you're a young lady, we're waiting for you to hit womanhood when you get married, that's your transition into womanhood. I think that's very dangerous sometimes.
When you're given away. When you're given away and you can finally complete the missing part of you that is your wifely duties. And don't get us wrong, we have nothing against the institution of marriage. In fact, we are, you know, supporters. Get married, sis. Absolutely, get married and all that kind of good stuff. But I loved what you were saying about this whole idea of completion in marriage. And again, we're not against completion in marriage, but when your entire identity and your entire trajectory is so wrapped around the thought and the idea of being somebody else's wife, it really doesn't give you much room to maneuver and do anything else. You could be the most successful woman ever, but if you don't have a ring on your finger, it's like everybody's like, but why though? Like, what's going on? I was watching some like online episode of a guy that was talking to other men and saying, you know, don't rush into marriage and wait until like you're in your early 30s to get married. But when I look at the advice that is given to women, it's often, you know, get married immediately. ASAP. Like, don't be waiting around. You'll be seeing testimonies. We got married in 6 months of meeting each other, and that was
Why dilly-dally?
That was it. Why dilly-dally? I knew he was the one. I felt it. I was praying for it. I was praying for that ring. And when I got it, I just felt complete. You wouldn't see the same conversation for men in the same multitude.
At all.
So I just found it so interesting how, like, for men, it's really about, manhood is really about going and conquering stuff, going and conquering the world, going and conquering the job, going and creating wealth. When for women, it's like, conquer the household, conquer the man.
And not even, it's exactly that. And I think a bigger issue is, or I think one of the issues within that is oftentimes it's seen that women will discover themselves once they're married.
Yeah.
That's when it's like switch. Whereas a man is meant to be discovering himself once he's discovered himself and he knows he is. Because that's why a lot of this rhetoric about waiting till you're 30 plus to get married, because then you know what you want, etc. Whereas women are told to figure that out once they get in marriage, because there's such a time clock on this, you know, sis, get married quick. And then you start to figure out, who am I? What do I like? What's my... And then, you know, you hear a lot of stories of, you know, our older sisters who are like, I had kids and I kind of lost who I was. Or even with our parents, you know, I'm still trying to figure out what I like, who I am independently
100%.
as a separate human being. And I think it's often because wifehood is so linked to womanhood that people don't think that they can thrive if they're not married.
100%.
That's not the case. Like, you're a human being with a purpose, with a destiny, with talents and skills inside of you, to be able to do whatever you want. And whoever, like, even what you were saying about marriage being about completion, I don't even think it's about completion. Like, I think marriage, and we'll probably do this in another episode, is about multiplication. That's my, like, it's about who are we as two individuals? What is our goal and our aim and our vision? We can reach that 10 times as fast if we're together. You know, and we can produce 10 times the amount, 10x the amount if we're together. But it's not me coming to ask you to be an addition to me. I'm asking for you to be a multiplication of me. Like, and for us to be able to do multiples more than what we would be able to do as individuals. Because what a lot of people, men don't see like marriage as completion.
I was even about to ask you, because what you said was so interesting to me. Do you think that might contribute to the reason why men, in terms of like what they want from women, they're not as fussed about the fact that she has to be like super
100%.
Educated or have lots of money and
100%.
stuff like that, because they see her as more of a helper as opposed to
I think
completer.
The smart man would want someone who is able to complement him in those areas. 100%. But I think most men, for them, it's more so, oh, this is going to sound so controversial.
We love it.
I think sometimes men see marriage as their chance to now settle down and have a family.
Yeah, no, for sure.
And now they obviously need a woman in order to have that phase.
Yeah,
do you get what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think that's why the more traditional homely stuff, because they see it as, this is our chance to build a home now. This is our chance to build a family now.
The little clave.
Do you get what I mean? Whereas a woman may see, this is my chance to gain speed in building wealth and obviously having a family and stuff like that, but also thriving in the stereotypical sense. So whilst the man will be like, I've already sorted out my career, I'm already making good money.
This man that will come and slap you with a prenup. You haven't built anything, sis, and he will come and slap you with a prenup. And you'll be there crying because you have nothing.
That's another conversation for another day. But yeah, like I think they more so see it as like, this is me settling down. Whereas a woman, it's framed for women as, this is me leveling up. And I think that's why they kind of see it as, can you build a home? Whereas we're seeing, can you provide? Like, do you get what I mean? Because this is my entering into that. Whereas he's seeing it as this is my transition into a new season of manhood. So that's the way I would think about it.
That's really interesting. I like that a lot. Oh, thank you for sharing that.
You're
hitting it today. Hook, line and sinker. That is super, super interesting. Moving swiftly on into thinking about, you know, women in relationships with quote unquote high value men. What do you think about the whole idea of leaning into your feminine energy to attract a high value man?
Okay, we were literally talking about this before we came on camera and before we started recording.
Yeah.
And even since we've had that feminine energy conversation, my mind has definitely shifted a little bit.
Yeah.
But the sentiments still remain. I think that
the main ones are the same, guys. Don't be thinking that.
I think you need to be careful in thinking that your femininity is simply like to be harnessed to attract a man.
Yeah.
But I also think, sometimes it can be very dangerous sometimes with the rigidity that we think about these categories. And this is what's feminine, this is what's masculine. Don't let them overlap. I think there is an importance in overlap. Like, I think there is an importance in being able to display what would be considered traditional feminine characteristics and being able to display traditional masculine feminine characteristics, especially in different contexts. In your workplace, you probably won't advance being extremely feminine in the traditional sense. And I don't really like the word energy, so I'm not going to use it. But with men, I think they sometimes, like, that's when you fall into tropes of toxic masculinity, when they feel as though they cannot show traits that are traditionally considered feminine because it's considered weak. And I think that that's where we need to be careful, that the feminine energy traits are not considered synonymous with weak and synonymous with beneath or lesser than or just simply submission, but actually as really important traits for society to thrive and survive. And we were having a conversation on Lydia Dinger's live. Shout out to you, Lydia, our honorary big sis. Honestly. And somebody brought up a really good point that feminine energy is actually really important. And it dawned on me that even during this pandemic crisis, we were able to see that nations with female leaders did very well in handling the crisis. And I think that's because, and a lot of research has been done into it, but traits that are considered more feminine, like empathy, being able to, be a bit more nurturing, actually do well in leading nations through crisis. Absolutely. Apparently. But sometimes it's categorized that, no, if you want to be a leader,
you have to be hard.
All these masculine traits. Nah. And I think that that's where men sometimes get it wrong as well, that leadership is simply about these traditionally masculine traits. No. And that's where a lot of men, I think we can sometimes even see it in our fathers. Sometimes our fathers didn't lead our households well, though they tried their best, because they were scared to be vulnerable, because they were scared to be to admit when they were wrong. They were scared to show their emotions and their history and what they're feeling and going through. But I feel as though there is wisdom in realizing. Let me just give y'all some Auntie Courtney advice.
Okay, miss. There is some wisdom, okay, somebody.
Especially in having more. It's really easy. And sis, we love that you're a part of the To My Sisters community and stuff. But one thing we really emphasize, and I learned this from you, is listening to men and what it is they have to say. And whilst I might not be able to understand the way you're thinking or even think that it's right, I need to realize that I'm not a man.
Yeah.
And if you're telling me that, and if men are telling you, well, this is what we want and this is what we look for, and you're like, well, that's not fair because XYZ, that's fine. You can stand in your beliefs and you should stand in your beliefs, but also realize that you can't force yourself onto anybody. Do you get what I mean? And I think that there's wisdom in knowing, okay, if a high value, hate the word, but high value man is looking for this, and my desire is for a high value man, then I should kind of position myself to be something that he wants. And of course, everything is based on generalizations and stereotypes and all of that. But I think that there's some wisdom in realizing that there is power. Oh, I can't believe I'm saying this.
I know, I'm looking at you.
Realizing that there is power in being feminine around masculine energy, right? But I also think, I think it should be, I have an issue with we went into this more in the episode, but I have an issue more so in the rise of like feminine energy content, because I think it's capitalizing off of the fear of women to be alone.
Yeah, for sure.
Do you get what I mean? And that's where I'm like, sometimes I can't lean into the feminine energy rhetoric because I feel like sometimes just the way it's being done, I don't like it. But for me, like when I have conversations with my mom and my aunties and women around me who I feel like you have really great wisdom, they do tell you about these things, about being more quote unquote what people would now quote unquote call as feminine, to make sure that your household runs and so that you can just have a functional marriage where both people feel happy, But how about you? What do you think?
I just love what you said about, and this even sounds very weird coming out of my mouth.
I'm telling you, we're different people. Season 2, we've transformed beings.
We've transformed a little bit, but I love what you said about listening to men. Because
your face. You said
listening to men. And when I say listening to men, I don't mean any of those trolls online. I don't mean just any, because I think the problem that I have with the rise of like feminine energy content and all that kind of stuff is, as you said, it's very predatory, and it puts you in a very desperate situation where you're just like, oh, that means I have to listen to the input of any man because I want to attract a man. No, there's levels to it. You can't just be listening to any Tom, Dick and Harry on the internet dictating how feminine you should be and how they want, you know, a woman that looks like XYZ when they are lying on their sofa.
Your bed sheets is brown. When we bought it from Asda, it was white. So, go and wash your pillowcase.
I just don't understand how we are taking advice from men who have not changed their bed sheets since they bought it. Those kinds.
It's disappointing. It's disappointing that this is how far we've come.
Stop it. But yeah, we've taken the rise of feminine energy content and just like this whole desperation to find a man means that we're now listening to any man.
Yeah.
No. Yeah. Listen to the men that you care about. Listen to your male friends. Yeah. Listen to your male partner. Listen to the people that you're actually interested in dating. Those are the people whose input is important. And I think the problem with social media in general is it appears as though every person's voice should be of equal weighting in your considerations of who you should be. And that's just not the case.
I love it. It is so true.
It's just not the case.
Even in that, like the people who are looking at this like feminine energy content, it's people who honestly just want to work on themselves. This is it. They just want to improve themselves. And I think in the efforts that women make to improve themselves and to make sure that they feel good and so that they can be their best selves is the level of self-development and personal development that we should seek in our partners. Yeah. And I think that sometimes women get chastised for having a standard of men that says, I hope you've worked on yourself. Yeah. I hope that you're the best version of yourself. And you're not just coming to me thinking that all men are equal because you have penises. That's not how it's going to run over here. Oh, goodness. Literally, like you said, there's levels to this. And if you're telling me that you have preferences, so do I.
Exactly.
If you have standards, so do I. Are you willing to match it?
Like, at the end of the day, talk to real people as much as possible. Your male friends, hello, talk to them. It's okay. It's actually fine. It's better you talk to them than you talk to people on the internet or take the advice of just people on the internet who live in a completely different context to you, have different relationships to you. And this is not to say that all content that you see on like masculine and feminine energy is bad. It's just that you need to be careful the weighting and the value that you are attributing to those pieces of advice. Even the To My Sisters podcast, this is just but one piece of advice that you might want to listen to or take into account. But really you want to look at your own context, look at your own relationships and think about realistically, what kind of man do I actually want to be with? And who can I talk to actually add value to shaping what that would look like?
That's so good.
So this whole tapping into your feminine energy to find a masculine man and stuff like that, it's neither here nor there. It's more about when you are conceptualizing your ideal relationship or the ideal partner or whatnot, what is informing it? If you allow it to only just be social media content or things that you see online or whatever, that kind of stuff, you will be disappointed every single time. So good. And if you are one of the people who are actually actively in a relationship and you're like, oh, how can I tap into my feminine energy to please my man? Talk to him. It sounds so basic. Good. Just talk to him. Ask him. Like, actually ask him.
And I think that's why sometimes, like, the original question, what was the original question? Sorry, my mind.
What do you think about tapping into your feminine energy to attract a high value man?
I feel like we need to be careful for it not to be about playing mind games. Like, I'm going to channel this energy to try and manipulate you into doing X, Y, Z.
This is it.
Your femininity is not a tool for manipulation.
Make yourself irresistible.
Let me tell you that, sweetie. Beloved, your femininity is not a tool for manipulation because the same way masculinity is not a tool for manipulation. We were given this example of women withholding sex and men withholding finances, right? Because it's this idea of I'm going to use my femininity and the thing that you desire about me to force you to do what I want you to do, rather than communicating with you and us trying to get on the same page and express our insecurities and express our desires and our expectations and have healthy, clear communications for ourselves and our family and our future. And then men do the same thing with money, and they do the same thing with like resources. Okay, 100%. I'm not gonna give you what you consider to be traditionally masculine and living up to my masculine role so that I can bend you to my desires and my wills and my emotions. Stop it. Stop that.
110%.
God doesn't like it.
No, nobody likes it. And I think just what you were saying about mind games is just so important, man. The way that we actually do need to talk about, and that's something that I wanted to touch on, in that when we do talk about femininity and what you said about withholding intimacy as well, is some of y'all be out there doing that.
This is something I wanted to, sorry, I just went before.
No, I know.
I feel like it's because when women, and this is why this whole feminine energy, masculine energy, high value thing train, we need to be careful. And like you said, have real conversations with real people. Because a lot of us start dating, and because we've consumed all this content, we think we're dating men rather than the man you're dating, the individual. You think you're trying to please the entire masculine species rather than the human being that's sitting right in front of you with their needs and their expectations and their desires. And the same with men. They think they're dating all women. They're dating women, the category. When it's like, no, you're dating
really
which is why you may meet somebody who you may fall in love with, who they don't even display these traditional things that people say. Do you get what I mean? Like, her hair should be natural. You may like the girl with the longest weave. Do you get what I mean? Or he should be 6 foot tall. You may want the guy who's 5'4". Do you get what I mean? And that's okay. And I think sometimes when we consume all of this content, we get into we take away the individualization of it. And we just see you as, oh, you're a man. This is how all men think. This is how all men act. Or you're a woman. This is how all women want to be treated. This is how all women behave. You're dating an individual. You love that individual. That individual has a story. They have insecurities. They have expectations. They have desires that you need to talk about with them if you want to walk with them. It's one person coming together to walk side by side.
This is it.
Not you and the whole of society.
This is it. And the thing is, behind closed doors, and I think, again, social media, I feel like at least every episode we have to mention it, because even the whole public display of relationships nowadays, people get in their minds that this is what a relationship should look like at all times, when really they're just showing you snippets. Even if they say, you know, this is us being transparent and in our element, it's still just a snippet. You don't know what they're going through or what they're talking about 24/7. So don't think that seeing how people talk about and portray their relationships online is exactly how your relationship should look like. It is between you and that person. That is absolutely mind that business, because that's the quickest way for the relationship to break down. When you start thinking that you're dating, as you said, the category men as opposed to the man will leave. The category will always stay, but the individual man will leave. And then what now? You're now purchasing another course on mastering feminine energy, and because it seems like you failed the first round.
Oh my goodness me. It's so true. And
now you're out of pocket and you're out of a man.
Fam, men will always be there. Your man,
you get,
his foot is out.
He's out. Do you get? Because he didn't sit down and say, right, so I have all these preconceived notions. What are yours? Let's talk about this. What are your expectations? You know, I think because we're still always trying to like get one up on each other in the relationships and stuff, we neglect the simples, the basics, sit down and talk to me as a human, you know, being on a level and tell me, okay, as a man, what pressures are you under? And this is not to say that it is easy to do these kind of things. This requires trust. Precisely. It requires trust. It requires time. It requires commitment to sitting down and getting to know the person, and then eventually being able to ask, okay, talk to me about what pressures you are under. Talk to me what preferences you have, honestly. Talk to me about what you require, what you need in a relationship. And then that's when you can start talking about, like, is there some kind of synergy between the two of you in the long term? And I think this is like veering a bit off course, but I feel like a lot of women are afraid of dating and failing. And dating and letting go. It's kind of like, oh, if I'm dating you because I'm dating you to marry you, or because I'm dating you because you're a high value man, I'm not even going to ask you about any of these things because this must succeed.
Oh,
we've been like, well, we're dating for like 8 months now. That means we have to succeed. It's actually completely fine for it not to. Ooh, you don't owe anybody anything.
This even seeps into like another episode we have planned on marriage and the modern day woman. So definitely stay tuned for that. That is so good.
You don't have to fail. It's okay. It's better you fail now than you get locked into a marriage. But people
see that as a failure of their femininity, failure of their masculinity.
And that's why what we were saying earlier about having this like trajectory being determined by whether you can get married is so toxic, because it means you can't recognize failure in the dating stage. Or you refuse to see it. You'll be like, oh, red flag, ha ha ha. But it's not really a red one.
You refuse to change. And that's one of the most
You'll say that
places.
Femininity is about compromise. Is it always though? Or are you just ignoring a red flag under the guise of compromise?
Or under the guise of submission.
This is it.
Or lack of assertion.
Submission. But you know that this man is toxic for you. Or you know that this is a fundamental thing that you're unwilling to compromise on. But feminine energy has told you that you need to submit.
Yeah.
But common sense said no. Which power are you yielding to? Which one?
Let common sense reign, sis. Let wisdom take its place.
Let wisdom take its place, because I'm telling you, save yourself the heartache. And do you know what? I'm going to try and save it for the next episode. Oh gosh, please because honestly, Courtney,
it's important though. I think that what you said was so beautiful. Like, we need to be careful. We just need to be careful. And I think that we need to stop putting so much pressure on ourselves to have these things so figured out. At the end of the day, you are who you are. You are who you've been made to be. And you don't have to, we say this all the time, you do not exist to please everybody.
Yeah.
You do not exist to please every man that you come across. You do not exist to be agreeable. You don't need to wait for anyone's permission or anyone's approval. You are who you are, and be the best version of who you are.
Yeah.
Continue to, explore what it means to be a woman, explore what it means to be quote unquote feminine. But you don't have to fall into any category. You don't have to be boxed in. We always talk about the multifaceted queen. Like, you don't have to be boxed into anybody's expectations. Absolutely, you are who you are. Thrive in that, and be confident in that, because that is your beauty add to society. Like, we need you to be who you are, not what people expect you to be.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
That's it. And the same with men. Any men listening to this, I'm definitely sympathetic.
Yeah.
No, not that I was figuring it out. No, because I was thinking sympathetic or empathetic, but I'm not a man, so sympathetic to the fact that the pressures that exist are massive.
Oh, for sure.
Right? Are huge, and we all propagate it. And I think that you have to take time to be an individual and go through your own journey, feel all the emotions. And when you do meet the person, not just a woman, but you meet a person, not just a man, but a person, walk that out in the beauty of what it is, and not just what you expect it to be or think it has to be.
Mm-hmm. Now, to wrap up, Courtney, how do we make the distinction between, as women, between having standards and putting men under undue pressure?
Oh, I think your standards complement who you are. Mm-hmm. I think undue pressure can sometimes be not giving people the room to evolve into who they need to be. Right? Yeah. I think that undue pressure is like, why haven't you got X, Y, Z? You're a man. Nah. Let that person evolve. And they might not be at the stage where they need to be with you. Yeah. You should be also free to let them go and evolve into who it is that they need to be. A standard is, this is where I am and this is where I see myself going. I want someone with these qualities because it complements that. Yeah. And it works well and in tandem with that.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to compromise on that, because then it would derail me. And of course there is then, you're not just taking someone on this journey with you, you're going on a journey with them as well. So there's compromise in that sense.
Yeah.
But you have to be happy to come to that compromise. But undue pressure is like, why aren't you X, Y, Z? This is my expectations of a man.
Yeah.
But what about this person's this person's dreams, this person's destiny, this person's character, and this person's journey, they're still on that, and you're going to be a part of that. Are you going to give them the room to evolve?
Yeah.
You don't have to be there for everyone's evolution. You may decide, I can't help you in this stage, or it's a bit of a waste of time for me.
Yeah.
That's fine. That's fine. Don't use people and don't give people false hope either. But I think it's really about, okay, standards are what complements me in my future. Undue pressure is, this is what I expect of you because society says so. And it's not about that. You two are going to come into, agreement as two people who work and complement each other, not just trying to fulfill these archetypes.
Yeah.
How about you?
Oh, Courtney, I think you've put it so beautifully. I don't even know if I have much to add to that. I love that. Especially what you said about the idea of being complementary to somebody. That's really what a standard is. It's really about you two coming together. Do you complement together? Do you match? As opposed to pressure is just about, where do they fall short? And can you do it now or yesterday? Like there's that time bound, there's that time element that's added to the pressure. So like, when are we going to get married? When are you going to provide for me? When will you do X, Y, Z for me? When are you going to match up to what society says you should be to me? As opposed to internally, these are the principles that I hold for myself and in a relationship. Do we have synergy around that? So
good.
That's what I would say to that. But unfortunately, we have come to that time where we have to say goodbye. The radio voice is really hitting me. It's really us really coming through. It's really coming through. But please let us know what you have to say about high value men and resting into your feminine energy.
Yeah, of course. And you can tweet us using the hashtag #ToMySisters, and be sure to sign up to the weekly mailing list where we share our exclusive Glow and Grow tips weekly. And of course, we will talk to you very soon on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify, Google Podcasts. Gosh, who are we? I love it. But as always, sis, keep glowing and growing.